there's often a common belief in Balkan land that if you have a good education, like you're good to go. And I've learned over the course of time that's such bullshit. It works in some disciplines, specifically if you want to be a neurosurgeon, well, you have to have some intellect. But again, we grow up for the most part. Good education, and you're going to make it in life. Well, what does make it in life mean?
The point was to go to school and then find a government job, and all you do is you're a plant. You don't grow, you don't challenge yourself, you don't do anything.
No.
That was the vision for our parents back then, but what did they know, right? It was transitioning.
I don't think so. Sucralose though, probably. But
Hidden sugar, probably.
yeah, there's always that's like a huge industry now. It's just energy drinks as a category is blown.
Is Prime an energy drink? Have you
Yeah.
heard of Prime? Like the two brothers, Logan Paul and Logan Paul and KSI.
KSI.
No, I have.
World where it used to just be coffee, tea, like for caffeine sources, and now it's like pretty much everything you consume has just tons of caffeine.
Ilija, you're a big tea guy, right?
I like tea, yeah. Yeah, I do.
Like you know the whole there's this, I mean, it's a ceremony. It's not just like, you
Making
boil
a
the
tea
water,
is.
right?
Absolutely it is. Yeah, absolutely. For vehement tea drinkers, yeah, it's like to steep it properly and
You do it certain time of the day as well.
I don't, but
Okay.
specific cup.
Okay.
English breakfasts, Irish breakfasts, or just regular black tea,
Black tea.
and an Earl Grey, and then brown sugar versus white sugar, and then you pour the sugar in first with the milk, then you pour the tea. So there's process here.
Yeah.
Like it's just not like putting
Yeah.
it in a mug.
It's not like me clicking espresso shot in the machine.
Exactly it.
Uh,
Precisely it.
Ceremonial.
Very much so.
Yeah.
For tea drinkers. Yeah. Yeah.
the joy, it's in the little things too.
Mm-hmm.
So I think just getting excited to make yourself a cup of tea and enjoy it after that, it brings you extra happiness.
Sure. I'm a creature of habit by and large. So once I subscribe to something, I'm usually really good to go. So in the morning, I'm on that basis alone, creature of habit. So I get up around 6:30 every morning. I kind of force myself to do that. I know I've read some kind of analytics around getting up even earlier, like 5 a.m. I don't buy that. I mean, some people subscribe to it. I don't, because I'm good with 6 a.m., 6:30, great to go. And my circadian rhythm as well. I'm good to go if I'm bed by 10:30. So I recognize that. Then love to take lemon water first thing in the morning. We live in Ontario, so we don't get sunshine every day, especially during the winter months. But I like to go outside for a few minutes initially, look up at the sky, and at least connect on a spiritual basis immediately. I really enjoy that. And then I guess on that point, Jamie, on a ceremonial basis, then I like to read for a bit. Sometimes just shit. Sometimes just Apple News, and I'm reading about Kim Kardashian and why she's wearing what she's wearing, or more so David Beckham and Victoria, and something's about cars. But then I move into my read of that point in time. Right now, I'm reading Simon Sinek,
Great
and
author.
great author, and The Wise specifically. After that, I work out, and if I don't work out in the morning, I find, again, creature of habit. I've tried a number of times, like trying to convince myself that I can work out late in the day.
It's barely happens, right?
Oh, please, man, it just
That's
simply
why it's
doesn't.
the first thing I do in the morning.
Yeah,
It's my hardest thing, like, the
yeah,
hardest habit to kind of grasp to it, but I do it and then I'm done. It's the hardest thing I do, and then everything else is easy during
after
the day.
that. Yeah. And it's just, the whole notion of aggregating small habits but understanding yourself, like self-awareness is the big part of that, of course. And so that's a long, long story. But for me specifically, and Blaze, obviously for you as well, first thing in the morning, I'm really good to go. And I've taken the lead from Ileana, from my daughter. She introduced me to the Nike Training Club. So basically, I mean, there's tons of these apps, but I like it. I like NTC. I'm dialed in. I'm focused for 15 to half an hour. And then I do wall sits for a while, stretching. I'm 61, so stretching's kind of key. And then after that, I meditate. And I find meditation is a peace of mind. Sometimes it's a struggle. Openly, it is. Jamie, Blaze, do you meditate at all, or do you choose to?
We both do in different ways. Like I use it. I use my sauna time to meditate.
Yep.
So I'll do it for 15 minutes, and I don't like. I'll take my, I don't listen to music or anything. I'll just sit down and close my eyes and breathe. And I try to. I'm self, taught. I try to meditate, and then my brain goes somewhere else, and then I get back to. But it helps. And I remember asking you this probably a year ago, and you said to me that you do meditate often.
I do.
And there's huge benefits to it as well. So
there are peace of mind. Yoga also, in some respects, is great for that, because even though it's difficult to stay for a class, but the breathing exercise, the consciousness of the breathing, presence, and openly at times, if my if my mind is kind of all over the place, it's tough for me to be present. It's called presenteeism. So you're there, but you're not really there.
You're not there.
Like you're there physically, but simply not there all the time, trying to be present. So with the two of you, Jamie, Blaze, I'm quite present right now. But if I had some lingering things from Beth and I, my relationship with Beth, or with my kids, or my business, it might not be that simple to simply be here and to be with you, kind of on an emotional level. So
it's easier said than done.
It is.
It's easier. I say that all the time. You can read in a book what to do. But again, it's easier said than done. You have to do it every day. You have to practice for a long time to become master of that habit. So do you change your habits on weekends, or it's the same exact habit pattern you do every single day?
I do change my habits on the weekends, and principally, when we had our dog, Ella, she just passed away a year ago. So Saturday mornings, and dogs just have this inherent, like they know when it's a weekend. I'm thinking, how the fuck do you know it's a weekend? Honestly.
They know it's Saturday.
It's Saturday. Like, how does she know it's a Saturday?
They're so smart.
So smart. Just dialed in. And so she stares at me on a Saturday morning. And so I feel partly, sometimes out of obligation, fair, and sometimes because I really want to walk with her for an hour. But notwithstanding Ella, my weekends are slightly different. I read for a longer period. Savor maybe another cup of coffee if that's what I have first thing in the morning. My workout is longer because I'm unencumbered, like emotionally unencumbered, mentally. Well, more so intellectually unencumbered. Maybe not emotionally. It's tough to be emotionally unencumbered, but intellectually. So it's not generally a work day. I do work on the weekends. I don't find, for me, Jamie, Blaze, I don't have a linear belief about hours. I don't. Linearity around 9 to 5, 8 to 4. I get it. It just doesn't, I don't subscribe to it necessarily. And so the weekends do differ. And so I aim to wrap up all of my rituals by around noon on a Saturday, generally speaking on a Saturday.
Do you work on a daily schedule? Like, do you write down your schedule, to-do list? What are you going to do every day or the day before that? You do that?
I do. And I adapt periodically. So for example, with, a few months ago, I just found myself kind of in chaos. Just can't keep up.
Yeah.
It's chaotic. There's just a lot of commitments. Yeah.
Do you think it's the world, like everything that's happening in the world right now? Because I feel the same. Like
Do you?
I do.
Yeah.
I do. And I manage well. I work well under stress. And I'm okay to do that. And again, I have 2 little kids, and I have to balance that out too. But I find even patience is not a thing anymore. Nobody wants to be patient. Nobody listens to what the other guy is saying.
Yeah.
People are rushing everywhere. They want results right away. And nobody, you try to help somebody, you have family members or friends or colleagues in work, and they're like, oh, really? So the information is everywhere, and nobody can tell you if that's the right information or the wrong one. So we live in this world, I think, today that you have to really carefully select who you talk to, who you surround yourself with. The smaller the circle, the better, but it has to be a very organically healthy circle.
Yep. Blaze, and that could be simply a manifestation of the choices that you make. Meaning that as you grow and you evolve, keep in mind, we met 7 years ago. And categorically speaking, you're not the same person today you were 7 years ago. And so as you grow and mature, emotionally mature, spiritually, physically mature, probably emotionally and spiritually, the 2 big ones, you attract other people, likely. Yep. I mean, speak to Beth about the law of attraction, right? I mean, that's You should have her for
I'm
a
a
podcast.
huge. She'll be our next guest.
Yeah,
she'll
she'd
be our
be
next
awesome.
guest. I know she'll be our
So
next guest.
absolutely, and I find at times as well as if I read something more, whether it's about mind gut connection,
Mhm.
whether it's bruising trauma, because we all have it. It's just to what degrees and to what extent, and how your behavior is, and how your choices are manifested by, and the choices you make in life. But so it could be simply that for you specifically, you become somewhat on a very subconscious level intolerant, though, and people also sense that.
But also, I believe I'm coachable. I admire successful people. I admire, you're my role model as a family
Thank
man, as a businessman.
Thanks, Chris.
The way you hold yourself, the way you communicate with people, you're always present. I'm trying still every day to master that, because not a lot of people, you can sit with somebody,
Yeah,
but then you can tell they're like,
gone.
yeah, they're gone. They're not here. And I think that's the biggest thing. We only live in the moment.
Yeah.
You're here now. You can't change anything that happens somewhere else.
No.
And I believe you're one of, the very few people I know that they master that.
Oh, thank
It's
you.
amazing. And I think
Please.
part of that is that's why you look so good. Not that 61 is
Ancient.
now when I'm getting closer to 40, but still, Jamie is 24. You get, the team is youngsters here.
Yeah.
But our goal
You're
is
how old? You're 22.
Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
both of them combined. It's no, actually that's 47. But the three of us, exactly. So it's, you guys are young, and that's one of our goals for this podcast is to make sure we can deliver a message out there for the young kids, because again, information is everywhere, and they get stuck in these YouTube videos and Instagram and Facebook information that they're not real.
Right.
And we want to help with just providing, making this happen, and we don't charge for this. It's free, so people can learn and listen. And
Nice.
the only thing we're asking for, whoever finds good information from this and good use for it, just share it out there so the world can see.
A nimblet of some good information to share with the world. And that's kind of soulful work beyond real estate.
Yeah.
I mean, if we're all on planet Earth and we just want to take care of one another, there's beautiful ways of doing so, which require little of you. But if it's really inherently soulful, so I work with Indigenous people largely, and I find the work, I mean, pension and benefits, what's originally what connected me to First Nations people. You call them tribal. Here, we call them First Nations in Canada. They're Indigenous to the country. And so pension and benefits connects me to these people in a professional sense. But my work is way beyond just pension and benefits, just the manifestation of those two arenas. And the work that we do, I believe, is just beautiful. It really, really is. It's purposeful for me. It's extremely soulful work for me. And so I wake up for the most part, most days. Like, I don't recall begrudging my work ever. I don't. That's also a choice, though. It is. It's a choice, but I don't recall begrudging.
But it's a choice that it's not easy to be made when you're younger. Like, when did you discover that that's your passion? Because you wake up, you don't wait for the weekend to come, right? You're excited to work. You're excited for the work days.
Yeah, great question. And to think about that on a conscious basis, about when, because years ago, keep in mind, Ileana was born in 94, Costa was born in 96. I was married in 92, so 31 years married coming up. Well, just passed actually October. And so initially it was just fucking survival, paying bills, nothing more.
Yeah.
And I can recall leaving London life in 94. And my business partner and I were just thrilled to have a car allowance just to pay some bills. For him, his bills were different than mine. 2 mortgages. Beth was a stay-at-home mom. So it was tough, stressful, traumatic. And so I don't know, Blaze, when I got to a point, though, where I really realized that that the work that I was doing with First Nations people was just really beautiful. That jumping in a car for a 1, 2, 3 hour drive, which would be common for me pre-COVID, was listen to satellite radio. Sometimes if I know I'm anxious, I would flip from station to station quickly.
Yep.
Satellite, well, back then it was 70s and then moved to 80s and then moved to channel 33, which is new wave.
Yeah.
First wave, they call it. And then if I was just Frank Sinatra, maybe in 70. And then sometimes, and podcasting for me has just been the more recent thing. I've listened to more podcasts. But so I don't know, Blaze. I can't give you a kind of a categorical answer about when specifically, and I'm not even sure that it was conscious, frankly speaking. But I've been largely connected to First Nations people on an emotional level for many years.
Okay.
And I think my work probably manifests that certain feeling.
Do you believe everything happens for a reason, or you believe that you create your own happiness and own future? Like, there's a lot of people, I'll ask them, even older than me, do you have goals? Like, do you write down your goals? And they'll say no. And I believe, maybe I'm old-fashioned, but I still write down my goals, and I tell the team that I do that, you know. Yep. And I finished my goals for 2024 now a couple weeks ago. And I know a lot of people wait for New Year's or Christmas, or they don't even do it, they procrastinate. But I write down my goals, and most of the people I ask, they don't do that. But a lot of successful people, they still do it, and they've done it for many, many years. So I think if you write down your goals, you envision your future.
Yep.
Because if I don't envision my own future, how can you or you or you? So I want to ask, what do you think about that?
Yeah. The analytics, if you speak to Dr. Karen Gordon, so Dr. Karen is a therapist in Ontario, but she just spoke, she speaks, I think probably worldwide. I met her at at Ileana and Costa's school moons ago. She was speaking on a speaking tour, and she's spoken at my annual conference now a handful of times. We have a memorandum of understanding with Dr. Karen Gordon to provide leadership tools, emotional intelligence, emotional literacy tools to our clients, and remove the client relationship. It's just the people, really, for the most part. And I believe that Karen said a few months ago that the analytics show writing down your goals is in a categorical way more successful for those who don't. So jotting down your goals. What you do, Blaze, I think on an analytical basis is the more successful way, according to Karen.
Okay.
Jamie, yeah.
Yeah, so I wanted to go back to, you were talking about habits, and I noticed in your habits that you talked about, very few of them in your morning routine and to set yourself up for the day, none of them have to do with business. They all have to do with interpersonal work, making sure that you're checking in on you. Yeah. Do you believe that that is a luxury that you've afforded yourself by the grind and the work that you put in over the however many years that you've been running your business?
I'm not sure, Jamie, because I'm not sure it's a luxury. Because I think by de facto we would kind of glean from that because I don't do any business first thing in the morning, that there's this probably a linearity around time specifically. So I don't know how to answer that one, Jamie, specifically. But I do think that because I'm intimate with my business, that I take care of myself first thing in the morning, and I do know that my business will be okay because I've taken care of it regardless, whether it's a weekend, whether it's late at night. When my kids were small, Jamie, Beth went to bed, the kids went to bed, so I would commonly be up between, let's say they were in bed by 7 or 8, age specific, and then stay up until often, midnight, 1 o'clock. Because it was just my waking hour. I could stay up. I still had energy at that point in time, and choose to focus my time on my family between the hours of 4 and let's say 6 or 7 at that point in time. So I don't know how to answer that one specifically. I'm not sure that there's an absolute answer to that specifically, Jamie.
But I love that we just said, Ilya. I love it because people ask about balance all the time, and I think when you say balance, it's like it's perfect. It's not. When you have small kids, you come back from work, you try to focus as much as you can to spend quality time with the family. And I do the same thing. I love that you just mentioned it. And then, they go to bed and now you're tired, but you somehow find energy to then ponder and do 9 to 11. I did the same thing last night. I have clients coming in Friday, tomorrow, and I need to send them emails, find them properties, and you find your time, and that's the balance. It's not easy. And when everybody mentions balance, they think, "Oh, it's perfect. You have a perfect lifestyle." No, it's I think
the new buzzword is boundaries as opposed to balance.
Boundaries.
Developing boundaries.
Really good.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
that's what I've come to believe. Again, I'm 61, so I different generation from especially you, Jamie, especially you, Ryan.
But a learner, right? You never stop learning.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
never stop
absolutely.
learning.
But because I'm a curious being though as
boundaries.
well, and so curiosity breeds.
Yes.
So the manifestation of curiosity, of course, is that you just buy more property though,
Yeah.
or you buy more cars, or you buy more clothes, or
meet new people.
or meet new people. So
do you think curiosity is the reason you have such a great energy? Like,
oh, thank you. Yeah, thanks, Jim.
you walk and you have that energy. You can see the aura, like around you, and not everybody can bring their energy vibration up as high as. And I think everybody's probably capable of doing it, but they don't teach you that in school.
No.
Another thing that they don't teach you in school, and if you don't teach your kids how to do it, then it's difficult.
True enough, and that's one of those things in school where there's this kind of linear belief around curriculum. You have to know math, you have to know geography, financial literacy, big one, emotional intelligence. Keeping in mind is that, and I'm Balkan, you're Balkan by descent, and Jamie and Ryan, there's often a common belief in Balkan land that if you have a good education, you're well educated, like you've got not smarts necessarily, because smarts requires good decision making. Intellect is that you can know curriculum. That if you have a good education, like you're good to go. And I've learned over the course of time that's such bullshit. It really is. It works in some disciplines. So specifically, if you want to be a neurosurgeon like my cool Alex, well, you have to have some intellect.
Yeah.
You have to.
Yeah.
But where the rubber hits the proverbial road is and again, Karen Gordon speaks about this with frequency, about emotional intelligence and leadership. And those, if you look at the C-suite people, principally because the studies come out of the States about the C-suite people, they have, they've been on a very kind of measured basis, have strong emotional literacy, emotional intelligence. So there's a number of kind of metrics by which you can determine someone's strong emotional literacy. But again, we grow up for the most part. Not sure about you, Blaze, but I certainly did. But
Same thing.
Good education, and you're going to make it in life. Well, what does making it in life mean? Because
you know how study so you don't work when you finish college. Like that was the go to school so you don't work.
Yeah.
Because the point was to go to school and then you find a government job and all you do is you're a plant.
Yeah.
You don't grow. You don't challenge yourself. You don't do anything.
No.
That was the vision for our parents back then. But what did they knew, right?
Yeah.
Because it was transitioning.
And my dad was born in 21. My dad fought between 41 and 45. So my mom was, she was born in 34, just passed away a few years ago. And so I have the benefit of my mom and dad's kind of, I wouldn't call it mentorship, but at least the behavioral attitude of my mom and dad, which helped guide some of my own kind of behavior. Some of which, Jamie, Blaze, Ryan, I knew categorically it's what I didn't want out of life.
Yep. That's really true.
So some of the decisions I've made aren't necessarily, that's the path down which I want to go, but I know the path down which I don't want to go. I know that clearly. Relationship was one. Patricia was a very serious girlfriend for me. We were like dated for a number of years, and she was really cool.
Yeah.
Really, really cool. We broke up, and I realized that, fuck, I know what I don't want. It's just, what do I want? I don't know. I really don't know what I want, quite frankly. And so some of the more compelling questions in life really aren't necessarily knowing what you do, but knowing what you don't is a key kind of step and key direction. So, yeah.
It's been interesting because that's what I've noticed is I think in your 20s, in your early 20s, all you're looking for is answers. Who am I? What should I do? What's going to make me, for us, we're probably thinking, what's going to make me not think about bills anymore? You know what I mean? Like just simple things, questions that you ask yourself. And, I surround myself with people that I want to mentor me. And it wasn't until a couple years ago that I realized that more often than not, something that worked for somebody might work for you. And it might be a great object to look at as something to implement for yourself, but it's usually what they failed at the mistakes that they made, where you have the actual like leaps and bounds of, okay, don't, you know, I had a mentor the other day that was like, if you don't love what you do, you're going to get outpaced by everybody. You know, you're going to get outpaced by everybody because you're not going to be willing to put in the time, the energy, and whatever that somebody else would.
Sure.
So from your perspective, what are things that you learned in the formidable years for you that you had to unlearn from, you know, mentors of yourself that, you know, traditionally are so, they're so planted into our brains as this is what constitutes like right or wrong,
Sure.
I guess.
Sure, Jamie, absolutely. And I want to also be conscious of, Blaze, your question a few minutes ago about setting goals. I don't set goals specifically, but I manage process instead. So I prefer to just aggregate small habits because they're small bite-sized habits. And so reading is one of them. I did not read at all. Ken Dryden, The Game, was the first book that I kind of read, and that was Ken Dryden's a famous hockey goalie.
When was that though? When did you start reading?
In the early 90s.
Okay.
And so I haven't set goals for a number of years. However, I do retool, recalibrate every year, but I'm conscious enough to do that. So I know that if I'm not getting enough sleep, I feel like a bag of shit. I feel horrible. I know that I've done some things that aren't good for me. And so I recalibrate as I go, as opposed to setting specific goals. So I don't want to be remiss in your question, though, specifically, Blaze. Jamie, coming back to you specifically now. So those, again, growing up in the Balkan household, there are lots of linear beliefs, two of which are it's pretty entertaining, actually. The first of which is school, of course. And yeah, because back then, it's not like I'm like archaic, and I'm really not. But however, having said that, it was get a job or go to school. And there was no other options. Period.
Yeah.
Remember that, please?
Get a job, go to school. Yeah. Get a job or go to school.
Dory and Dorby.
Yeah.
And my generation often talk about that. The other part about that is we all had part-time jobs. Like I don't remember anyone in my generation not having a part-time job. But that's the first. Jamie, there's many. So we could go on for hours upon hours. But the other one, of course, is debt. Never have debt. And I don't subscribe to that either. I think debt can be structured well, can be a good thing if it's structured well. In this environment, of course, you can have debate whether you carry deposit or pay down debt, but regardless, that's a whole different discussion. So there's two. The other one is working hard. That's a dangerous one because in my culture specifically, not just in my culture, like I'm a Canadian of Serbian descent, but in Balkan land particularly, there's this kind of narrative around it's a badge of honor if you work hard, and particularly on the male side, guys who would testosterone as opposed to estrogen, like that would be for the most part. So often, if you're perceived as working hard, you're perceived as a good person. Isn't he good? Works hard.
He's a hardworking man. He's a
hardworking man. Yeah. And I don't necessarily subscribe to the whole concept of working hard. I think there's working, and sometimes it might be hard, but I put in some long hours, and I don't necessarily see my work as being hard at times. I find it to be very intimate, and I find it to be very kind of very intuitive for me as well, and quite enjoyable. Are they long hours? I guess someone would say that it's hard work. I still don't see it that
It's
way.
hard if you don't like what you do. So if you work well, and you, when I'm in the office, when I'm with clients, when I'm showing properties, my day goes by
Flips.
minutes.
Yeah.
And it's 9 hours, and I'm like, okay, like I need more of a day. So that to me is like I enjoy what I'm doing, and it's that's part of the happiness. And I have friends, and we talk about this in the previous podcast. They do something because somebody else was successful at what they do.
Yeah.
And they think it's a pattern and they can do it. And then in 10 years later, they're miserable. They have the money, they have a nice car, house, but they're miserable.
Yeah.
And I think I'd rather have happiness, peace of mind, joy when I do something that I love doing than a big bank account.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And some people's kind of idea of success is what they drive.
It's money. They
Where
think
they live.
success is money. Yeah.
And that's a dangerous pattern, of course, isn't it? That's a very dangerous.
Nobody talks like everybody. When I met somebody and they don't have a lot of experience in business or life, they'll ask, oh, what do you do? How much you make? And nobody even answers this or ask the questions the right way. Nobody asks you, first of all, how are you? Are you married? Are you a family guy? How is, are you a good father? Who do you talk to about being a better parent? Everybody talks about money and business and what to do. The whole world seems like to give you rewards if you make more money and if you're successful in the job, and nobody rewards you for being a good parent, being a good friend, a good neighbor. It's changed so much.
Changed a lot, but the good house or the nice house, nice cars, those are identifiable. They're identifiable metrics, aren't they?
Yeah.
And so they're very overt measures of success, and good, bad, or otherwise. But the world often often looks through the lens of success as how much money you have. And wow, that's just so flawed.
It is.
It really is, in my estimation. It's just shitty thinking. Doesn't mean to say a person doesn't have a lot of money or they've done well for themselves. Yeah. But if that's the gauge by which they see their life, okay. I would argue that a number of ways, actually, 6 ways to Sunday on that one.
Yeah.
But there's many ways of looking at a purposeful life, in my estimation, for me specifically. And the idea of this podcast specifically is to empower other people as well.
100%.
And so I would be careful about chasing a car or a house or anything like that, because that's quite immeasurable, actually.
And it's interesting because, recently I had somebody ask me, what is your driver? And I think in your 20s, it's survival. In large part, it's okay, I have bills to pay.
Yep.
I have this thing called taxes that I have to worry about. You know what I mean? You have all these different functions. But what's the actual driver? Because if it was just money, then, for me, there's plenty of jobs that can pay me plenty of enough money. You know what I mean? So when I wrote down everything that drove me, very few of it was financial. Make my mom proud. Prove everybody who doubted me, writing some specific names down, proving them wrong. Proving the people that I care about, Ryan, my business partners, proving them right. How is your enemy? I'm going to put enemy as just a blanket statement in terms of just a driver for you. How has that evolved from when you were, in the early 90s to now?
Wow. You know what, Jamie? It's a big discussion to unpack, but I want to make it. I want to make it succinct, specifically for this podcast, recognizing that we don't have all day, and nor do people want to listen to me all day. I listen to myself all day. Boy, oh boy. So I will say that growing up as a child, a ton of bruising, ton of trauma, lots of it. And I recall some distinct kind of poignant times in my life. Specifically, I went to Mohawk College in Hamilton for 2 years. Thought it was a great architectural technician diploma, did quite well. Went to McMaster University after that, thinking I could just kind of parlay the work at Mohawk to McMaster. I was deadly mistaken. Very, very mistaken, because I was, at Don Cherry's Grapevine, watching the Leafs game on Wednesday, at the John on Thursday, at the Rat, 2 pubs on campus. On Saturday, I'd work at A&P. And then Sunday, I had one day left for kind of intellect, for studies, and I don't have that intellectual horsepower. I'm not an academic by nature. And so a series of kind of those events that occurred. So that was one. I was in academic probation after a year at McMaster. And I remember this distinctly, a professor on a position or paper that I'd submitted, his comment to me was, although English may not be your first language, it is the official language of this university, and I'd ask you to use it as such. Yeah, holy shit. I'm not speaking English properly? Wow. Okay. Then I worked at a gas station. I was fired from that gas station. I didn't use the credit card machine properly. And I worked at a food store, IGA, and was fired from IGA. And I think they had some aha moments at that point in time. So I'm not sure that there was kind of turning point specifically, but what was a turning point Jamie Blaze Ryan for me specifically is when I went to Brock University in St. Catharines. And I'm hoping I'm answering your question, but I could be answering in a kind of a roundabout way. And I went to Brock, much smaller school. I felt a need to continue academia to some extent, and then played collegiate rugby at Brock. Was that key? Yeah, it was key, big time. Why? Because Brock was a much smaller school, and I was held accountable. And my trials and tribulations academically to that point, why? Because I wasn't held accountable, because I didn't understand how I grasped learning. I didn't know how I learned. I didn't know it.
Did you make your own decisions, or do you have mentors, somebody help you to make a decision along the way?
Well, I think I made my own decisions because keep in mind those failures manifest in what? Shame and embarrassment.
But it's a learning experience, and that's why you are where you are today. I think you have to go through.
Huge drivers.
Shame. That's really because you mentioned, gas station, lost the job.
Yeah.
Got fired.
Fired.
Yeah. Food service.
Yeah.
Lost. Got fired.
Yep.
At any age, that's a troubling and like a very emotional feeling, because it's the job itself does not seem like it's intellectually straining.
Right.
Yet I'm not able to do the job to the level that they will employ somebody. Like that's a self-worth thing that kind of messes with your head. So was that kind of the thought process that you started to have? Like, is this the type of person am I going to be? Am I going to be the type of person that gets fired from a gas station for the rest of my life?
You bet.
Yeah. Interesting.
On a conscious level. Absolutely. And some game changers specifically, used the cliche. So I was hired at A&P, a food store. They were aggregated, they were purchased. And my boss at the time, Morley McLean, I was a farm kid because I worked on a farm. Child labor, back then it was commonplace. Picking tomatoes and peppers. I mean, you couldn't do that today to kids, but back then it was okay to do so. And so Morley McLean liked me because I was a voracious worker. I was accustomed to picking tomatoes all day. And so, in a food store, given that I had these previous lessons and the shame and embarrassment kind of lingered for me, so Morley McLean hired me, and I'd often work on long weekend shifts because they needed there was long hours, and the food store was busy because there was lots of campers around. That was the first, but secondarily, Brock University. I can't speak about Brock enough. Why? Smaller school. Much more intimate than McMaster. If you missed a class, a prof would see you in the hall. You missed class today. Like, is all okay? Holy shit! Like, they actually know I'm attending class.
They care.
Yeah. And then when I played rugby, you miss a practice, you get demoted. I'd never played rugby, but what I had was tenacity. I had assertiveness. And I didn't know the game that well. Still don't know the game that well today. But boy, could I make my way around the field.
Yeah.
And boy, was I assertive. And boy, did I have even some of my anger shit that I had, if I had any, and I had lots, I could take it on the rugby field.
Yep.
Beautifully, stunningly. And that was great for me. The other part about Brock, which was kind of compelling, is a bunch of my teammates also, even though they weren't huge academics, but because I was a part of a community, we'd all study together as well. And so now you're kind of, I wouldn't say shamed, but you feel inclined to study with them.
Mm-hmm.
And so over the course of time, you develop these habits, aggregated habits about, well, I mean, they're studying, I should probably be studying as well. If I just followed my path of McMaster, I would have just studied on a Sunday or Saturday or whenever I had the time, as opposed to making the time. Very different things, right? Making the time, finding the time.
Mm.
Yep.
So that was key for me. And then the next step, of course, now I'm feeling better about myself. And, London Life and insurance companies on campus, and they're recruiting salespeople. Back then, again, I sound so archaic, and I don't mean to be, but just that what it was back then. Copier companies, paper companies, selling paper, and insurance companies.
Huge.
London Life. I remember this distinctly. They didn't hang out at where the academics were hanging out. Guess where they're hanging out? They had their table set up in the gymnasiums where the pool was, athletic center, looking for people who had specific skill sets, not necessarily the biggest academics, but they were looking for some sort of a subsect of emotional literacy and working with a team concept, learning how to win, lose. And I would encourage parents today, kind of wholeheartedly that when their kids are involved in sports, let's not get too focused on whether they win or lose. Let's focus on the medium of the game, and recognizing that sport often helps kids develop that emotional literacy and that the EQ as opposed to the
100%.
IQ, big time. And so London Life hired me, and I thought, well, I mean, what are my options? Again, Jamie Blaze Ryan coming back to, it's not what I wanted, but I know what I didn't want. And going back to the farm, picking tomatoes.
You didn't want.
Oh my God, Blaze. It was horrible work.
So this is the 90s.
Yeah, this is the late 80s now.
Late 80s. And I know all of this, but I think it's very important for the podcast and for our listeners to hear this. Do you mind sharing with us, where were you born and your way from the Balkans to Great Britain to Canada?
Yeah, I'm happy to share that. So my mom and dad grew up in the same village in the former Yugoslavia in Bosnia. So my dad fought between 41 and 45 after when the King's Army in former Yugoslavia as Christian Serbs. They were moved from prison camp after honorable discharges from prison camp to prison camp, and came to the UK with his father, my late grandfather Lazar, and I still have my Lazar's watch.
Wow,
a Lamania, which he packed.
That's priceless.
Blaze.
Priceless. And I know you love watches. You have
Oh
good
my
collection.
goodness. He packed it in lard. Bought it for my father, has my father's initials in the back of it. So it's in a safe at home. It's one of these kind of treasures. And I think maybe just on an emotional level, wow, just kind of compelling. And so at that point, in the UK, my father felt that he should marry. And so back then they telegrammed back to the village and of course to my mom's father. But back then, as quirky as that sounds today,
You have to ask the father.
you have to ask the father, firstly. And I know in some cultures this still exists. So I want to be respectful of other cultures specifically, but in a North America basis. But she couldn't marry until, on a sequential basis, her older sisters were married first.
Goes in order.
Goes in order.
Whoa,
Yep.
that's interesting.
Jamie. Yeah. And so he basically sent for my mom. My mom went to the UK and they were married in 60. My sister was born in 61. I was born in 62. And kudos to my dad. My dad was just fantastic. My dad could read. He learned. So I think part of my behavior, not DNA, because we could argue DNA, right? Part of my behavior is that my father was a forward thinker. Why? He learned how to speak English. A lot of guys didn't. He could write. He could drive a freaking car.
Yep.
Most guys didn't, but my dad drove. And so at that point in time, but he felt also the UK wasn't a great place for my sister and I in which to grow up, because we were considered foreigners back then with my last name, Parojcic.
Parojcic.
Yeah, it's a funny name. And so in the area in which my mom and dad lived, my dad overheard someone calling me a bastard because I wasn't a domestic citizen. I was born there, but in their estimation, with my funny name, I didn't belong. My dad did some kind of research and looked into North America, went to Chicago, a lot of Serbs in Chicago, Indiana, Chicago area, Illinois, call it Illinois, Indiana, and then came to the Golden Horseshoe of Hamilton, Toronto, Niagara Falls, of that region, and decided that the Canada was a place for us in which to grow up. So we bought a farm in small town Ontario.
Progressive thinker back then. That's amazing.
Yeah. And
you got to remember that back then there was no internet, no computers, nothing.
None of that. And in the UK, it's just a beautiful story. And I don't lose sight of this. My mom and dad were making £12 a week working, but this is 7 days a week, working as chefs, call it chefs, in this hostel complex where, not hostile, but hostile for under greenhouses. Working £12 a week, the average person's making 3. They're making 12. 7 days a week, long days, no holidays, but they were willing to invest that sort of time. My mom couldn't speak English, and so within a few years, guess what? They bought a fourplex,
Save money. Yeah.
a fourplex in Shepherd's Bush in London. Who of my last name buys a fucking fourplex? Like, honestly,
Wow.
uncommon, uncanny, but that's how forward thinking my dad was. And my mom, because she was a voracious worker, is exactly what my dad needed. He needed someone who could support as well. Beautiful story. It really
This
is.
is where your love for real estate comes from.
Possibly, yeah, exactly it.
I love it.
Exactly.
Fourplex?
Fourplex in Shepherd's Bush in London. And so
Did you end up selling that? Or
we
you-
did,
you-
yeah. I mean, it's just too bad we couldn't, well, they didn't hold on to it because today,
Nice for the portfolio. Yeah.
oh, imagine that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be really cool, actually. Yeah. So, so I think that was kind of the seed of the history, the legacy. Grew up in small town Ontario in Dunnville, and we have a cottage in Dunnville. Beth goes back every week. I'm there with some frequency. I just feel a great deal of intimacy with a small town. I do. But interestingly enough, Blaze, to the real estate part. So my mom and dad, because of course having a roof over your head, and I subscribe to part of this now. Before, of course, given my age and given my history now and some of the experiences, is that my dad so wanted me to have a house, and so he helped me buy my first house in St. Catharines with my friend Doug Smith, who was a professional hockey player. He played for a number of hockey teams, ice hockey that is. And so Doug and I bought a place in St. Catharines. And my dad so wanted me to kind of dip my toe into that real estate market.
You still have that house today? Or?
Sold it.
Sold it. Okay.
Sold it years ago.
That was the one you a couple years ago, or no?
It was many moons ago. And we
okay.
sold it. You know what, Blaze? It was. I would say it was a fire sale, to be quite frank with you. We just tenant after tenant after tenant, and it was just a tough. I was living in Burlington. Doug was living in Ottawa. It just wasn't simple to manage, so we sold it on a fire sale basis. But so yeah,
I really appreciate you share that with us, because when people see success and they see you today and you drive a nice car, you dress up very well, everybody thinks it's easy. It's not. When you really go back and step by step and look at the whole puzzle, you have to go through struggle. You have to go through tough times, and that makes you a stronger emotionally, and that brings success in the long run. And
absolutely. So what they see, and it's important to understand for your listeners specifically, is that result doesn't necessarily speak to process.
Yep.
No one has unless the people who know me well, and you know me to some extent as well, very intimately.
Yep.
Know the times through which I've been to get to this point in time. I still see a counselor. I still have a coach, counselor, Doc H.
Yep.
I adore him, and I see him with some 2 or 3 times a year, recalibration, check in what I'm feeling, trying to get my head around whether it's the little Ilija that feels bruised, or whether I feel like a bag of shit, or I've said something that's uncharacteristic, or out of spite, or out of ego, or. And so I still see someone. I don't see not seeing someone. Still do my homework around self-awareness, humility.
Humility. It's very important.
Oh,
Very important.
wow. And I just see so much of it where people have done well for themselves, and so they think they're all that in a bag of chips. Really, buddy?
Yeah, I'm
Really?
the best one, and they
Really?
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah.
So
Do you think like ego, that's a great touch point, because I think in our 20s, at least the position that I can just speak personally,
Yeah.
I think ego is probably the number one inhibitor to success in terms of, I see it like just in some inhibitor and then driver in some respects. It's like, you want to be the best, so then you work like the best and all these different things. But do you think that from your perspective, when it comes to ego, was that just over time learned, that you were like, you have to be able to drop this in order to gain the perspective that I think true wealth, true happiness, true purpose in life is built from? How, explain your journey with that.
yeah, absolutely, I do. And do I speak from ego at times? Yes, I do.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think I'd be misleading. I'd be lying to all of your subscribers and listeners that if I didn't say that at times I do. Do I like it? No. I don't like myself when I speak from ego, because often it's from a place of lack.
Ego can make you or break you. You can use ego for better you, but you can also, if you let it control you
Yeah.
more than you can,
Yeah.
it can destroy you.
Yeah.
I think that's how I feel about ego, I think.
Yes. Yeah. So I guess it's we're going down that path of your perception of yourself and others' perception of you.
Yep.
And so if there's somewhat of an alignment, I mean they're fairly harmonic, then you're I wouldn't say you're emotionally balanced, but I would say that there's a sense that you won't speak from that point. But at times, have I? Yes, I have, and I don't like myself. I know it. At times, I've apologized. It just happened
So you
last
can
year.
recognize it.
Oh my goodness.
I do too.
I can't even go down that path
Yeah.
with you. It's a long path of speaking out of just, anyway.
But it's it's self-awareness.
Yeah.
The fact that you just pinpointed a time a year ago where you felt
knew
like
when
you
it happened.
spoke in ego, I think is like mind-blowing, because there's a lot of people that, it's just a part of their daily vernacular. They're just used to it in that way. I have a question in terms of the technical business aspect. So how much of, and there's a lot of people that say it's cliche, but your belief in yourself is the true driver to your success, your self-worth, all these types of things. How much of business and success and wealth is technical in terms of what you know, in terms of how to operate your business specifically, industry specifically, and how much is it more yourself personally, your belief in yourself, all the intangibles, all of the micro habits, how much, where do you think that balance is?
So let me separate, Jamie, that specific question into two silos. The first of which is outside my business, and that would be my avocation, and that would be real estate and what my family has done collectively, Ileana, Costa, Beth, and I, as a collective. It's Angus now as well, because he's my son-in-law. So it would be him included as well. On that basis, Jamie, specifically, it's behavior that I've developed, but aligning myself with right people. So the attraction part. So Blaze, when you and I met in 2016, I'm guessing, at that open house, serendipitous.
On a Wednesday.
I'm not sure what day it was. I just recall I was with Vlado and Dragan and a bunch of my pals. We just met Blaze. So a big part of that whole, as opposed to becoming really knowledgeable about those, although I've developed the knowledge base, but it's aligning myself with people who do. And that is the Blaze of the world. That is the Michael Griffith of the world back home as a realtor. It's, Paul as on, the contract legal counsel. It's having, Sean as tax consultant. It's having Cindy as our private banker and who helps guide us on that basis. And Cindy does far more than just kind of transactional stuff. She's introduced us to some really, really great services within the confines of RBC, and particularly around managing wealth and wealth preservation, and also helping guide us on things like, I wouldn't say budgeting, but living within specific debt means.
Okay. Not over leveraging.
No over leveraging.
Okay.
Because part of my old habit, Jamie, would be specifically curious, buy. Yeah, I saw a property. I want to get it. How do we do it? And so Cindy's been instrumental in her team in helping us develop kind of metrics around specifically that. So within the confines of WP and my business partner, Jordy, and I, our world is, it's very teachable. The group benefits side specifically and the pension side. But there's never a lack of things to know and understand. It's more so around the human behavior part. That's the big part of it.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, that's the big part of it. And so you can know our stuff really, really well, but the human behavior, that's a podcast in itself.
So powerful.
Yeah.
And one of the, we met so many high achievers and great people, and you're successful not just in business, in life, Ilija, and that's why you're my role model.
Thank you.
And I really appreciate you. I appreciate your time being here. Your presence here with us.
Sweet.
It's amazing. It means a lot to me personally, and I know it means a lot to the team. It means a lot for whoever is listening to us and watching this podcast. I really appreciate you. And I think huge part of your success is you're an open book. You share your knowledge. And I think by sharing and giving, the universe or God or the world gives you back
Yeah.
10 times more.
Yeah.
And that's one thing I learned from you when I first time shake your hand back on that Wednesday in
Wow,
2016. And just want to let you know one more time how much I appreciate you. I love you. And you're a big part of my success as well, as a mentor, as a friend, as a client. And I'm so happy we did this, season 1, episode 3, legendarily
Right on.
with you, sir. And I hope we'll do one more in season 2 and season 3 and go on and go on. Again, it was supposed to be 30 minutes and it's what, an hour?
Is it?
Yeah.
Just about.
Oh, wow, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know you have 10:30, so
Yeah.
I mean, thank you.
Yeah.
It was amazing. Thanks so much for being part of this.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here and very happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me, and I love you too.
Pleasure.
By the way as well.
Pleasure.
So yeah, Jamie, I've enjoyed your company. Ryan, it's nice meeting you too.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Really appreciate it.
yeah, awesome.
Wonderful.